Hey YouTube, how you guys doing? My name is Kyle, you know me as Dragonmar, and welcome to a new video. Today we'll be debuting a new series titled Valorant Quick Guides. These videos will be shorter than your traditional guides or tip videos that you may have been seeing on my channel, but I'm going to pack them full of great information. It's going to be nice and concise, just for your viewing pleasure, but at the same time we're going to be going over some really interesting things, and perhaps answering some frequently asked questions in nice sort of guide format. Giving you guys some good answers and hopefully helping you learn along the way. And that's why we're going to start things off with explaining what a default is, sort of how it works and how to use it, as well as giving some examples. With that being said, let's begin. Now, you've probably heard the term default or defaulting or running a default quite frequently throughout your time in Valorant, or maybe even another TAC shooter, honestly, because it does carry over across games, but you might not know exactly what it means. A lot of people, when they hear default, they assume people are talking about planting in the default spot, which is also called default. Kind of confusing, I get that, but the default I'm talking about is actually sort of like a strategy or a positioning rather than a plant spot. So let me explain, right? This is how I would define a default. So a default is a strategy that a team uses, typically consisting of one player taking control of each lane on the map. So a default is probably even better described as just being the actual positions of each player to control those lanes rather than some sort of real strategy using, any sort of abilities. None of that's required. It's all about where you're standing, and generally one person is in each lane. So you might be rightfully asking, why is it important to understand this? And why is that even useful? One person standing in each lane, how is that anything revolutionary? Great question. So there are a few things that defaults do that are very useful. First of all, it's going to provide you with a lot of additional time to come up with strategies and ideas for next rounds or even that round in particular. This is often a tactic I saw a lot in games like Counter-Strike, where teams would lose the previous round and be forced to save, and they would still have to come up with strats for the next rounds, how they want to do things, change things. But if you die right away, you run into the problem of needing to use a timeout. Well, a default allows you to stay alive quite a bit longer just because of the nature of how it works and the fact that you're not getting aggressive. So it's really great for giving you some more time to sort of develop ideas and strats. Now, second though, it's going to provide you a ton of information about the locations of enemies based on the presence they show in each lane. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, a lane is essentially each part of the map sort of connecting the attacking side and the defending side. Generally, maps in TAC shooters have 3 lanes. Sometimes there's a few more, like on Haven, there's kind of mid being split up into 2 separate lanes, things like that. But that's what I'm talking about when I talk about a lane. And essentially what a default is going to do is, because you're going to have one player in each position on a lane, you're going to know what utility they're using and who's showing up and who's shooting, what type of weapons, things like that. Ton of information to be gained. And then third, it allows you the opportunity, not necessarily the assurance, but the opportunity to punish aggressive pushes because of its safe nature, right? A default is all about holding. You're not pushing. There is no utility usage. There is no flashing corners. All you're doing is holding for pushes. That is defaulting. A default is intended to be a strategy that is safe. There is nothing aggressive about it. Anyone who tells you to get aggressive in a default, you're not running a default anymore, because the entire purpose of the default is to gain information, to wait out a little bit of time, take that info, and then use it to make a better strategy rather than trying to use a strat right off the bat. And potentially running into problems because of how the enemy adjusts or their positioning, right? So you can use abilities and make noise, or you can stay silent and wait for the enemies to do that. Figure out exactly who's on which site, what abilities they've used, maybe where they put trips, cages, that kind of thing. If they're using smokes, great, all of that stuff. And guess what? The enemy is going to have no extra information about where you're going to attack, because even if they do see each of your players, you're going to be in all separate locations, all separate lanes. This is great because it means that they're not going to have any additional information to go off of to stack a site. They're not going to spot 5 players over towards A. They're going to spot 1 person towards A, and that's exactly what you're looking for. It provides the opportunity to have the element of surprise, which is extremely important, particularly on attack. So, for example, if you want to play in a default for about the first 30 seconds of a round, that will give you some time, gain some info, and then do your attack on A, for example, because this way you have the information, you haven't overcommitted, the enemy team isn't any bit wiser if they've taken aggressive peeks to check or thrown cameras to try to look at you. If you're showing presence across the entire map, it's keeping the enemy honest, and that's exactly what you want to do because that'll give you an easier time taking sites. Defaults also, through map presence, deny enemy advancements and flanks. This is something else that's really important. Remember, when you're showing presence in a part of a map, the enemy is going to be a lot more reluctant to try to push and go for flanks. I'm thinking of maps like Haven in particular, where this is really prevalent. So by holding these positions, you're actually denying the enemy from being able to aggress and to push up on you. Also gaining your own positioning on the map and denying enemy aggression. And for our example, we'll be using the map bind. Now, I've added a little illustration here, and you're welcome for that, just to show you sort of the general setup and how it would work. And remember, I'm not going to show you this on every map because it's so simple, but it's so perfect in the way it works out in reality. But I still wanted to show you at least one example. So as you can see, starting over by B site, we have one player over by long B. Now this player is going to watch for that aggressive B long push, getting over by teleporter or exiting out of garden there. You don't ever want to allow that when you're trying to take B. You want them to be confined in the site. So on that, in this circumstance, you want to be hanging out around fountain, watching that push. Then you're going to have one player back towards the bottom of B mid there. You're just going to be watching for that hookah push. You don't want someone to somehow get behind those double boxes over by the teleporter. So you're just going to be holding for that push and that walkout. Then on this map, because there's only 4 actual lanes in this situation, we're going to throw 2 players over towards mid, one watching the push to the left. We want to absolutely stop people from getting into cubby, and then we'll have one person watching the push over towards the right, and this person's going to watch for that double box jump up or sage wall, whatever sort of shenanigans are going to be happening there. And then finally, we'll have one last player over by shower, making sure no one is pushing showers and no one is getting that ult orb. Now this is what a default looks like. These are the positions that players can take to set up a default. And then you take your information from this and you play off of it. And that is why defaults work so beautifully. Alright, and that is going to conclude our very first Valorant quick guide on defaults. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you learned something new. In this video, obviously, I explained what a default is, how it works, sort of, and why it's so important, as well as providing that example for the map bind. You can sort of apply that to any map, though. But if you do have questions, leave them down in the comments below. I'd love to answer them for you. If you have a suggestion for the next quick guide you'd like to see, leave a comment as well. But with that being said, if you did enjoy the video, remember to leave a like, comment, and of course, subscribe for more content coming in the future. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy, and peace.